Hi everybody, Mr. Simmer here. So welcome back to Generational Farming. For those who are newer, this is a series on FSN that we're going ahead and working through multiple maps without really knowing when we'll be moving and so forth. We do know when this move is happening because we've been given that announcement, but then when we go to Generation 2, we'll be in an unknown state at some point for a while until we know when we're moving again. And the goal is to make as much money as possible over the generations. So I'm actually up a bit early, as I would really want to be, because today is supposed to be a mowing day. However, as you can see, it's not quite midnight yet. So even though it is morning, the servers have lost enough time at this point that I don't have the opportunity to start mowing my grass yet. So to not waste time, since I've got 45 minutes, I'm here going ahead, and I've taken a contract here on field 19. I think I'm gonna, instead of fighting the up-down every time, I think I'm gonna go ahead and go across here, and that way I just have to climb a little bit, but it's a much more level run, how about that, than it would be otherwise. So let me get myself lined up first. Alright, and there we go. It took me quite a while to get set, and initially when I was unfolding I was like, wait, I'm going to be able to be wider, but I'm not. This is as wide as I can go. This is a big field up here on field 19 when I have been working it. So it's been several days since I've been on the last episode. I have done my third mowing of the year, waiting to do the fourth, so that's pretty much the pattern I've settled in. I've never gotten more than 5 or more than 4 mowings since the first time when I got 5, so that may have been a quirk of the fact that the grass was already present and ready to be harvested right away. I don't know how that worked out, and that it's just not cycled through that way again. So definitely not the high level I thought it could be, but it is more than enough for what I need at this point, and honestly for what I can handle. I shared last time certainly just the amount of work that it does take 6 hours per cutting, and just given the fact that I've got to get it in sporadically amongst life, it can take me all day to get the cutting done between the time when I can actually get 6 hours in. So what that has really turned into is it's pretty rare for me to do a contract, which is why I thought, well, I'll go ahead and include this as the episode highlight, because that was initially what I was going to do. And I'm saying highlight's the wrong word, as the backdrop to me just getting you up to speed, as opposed to you seeing me mowing again. So there are a few things that I've learned, which again is part of what I've shared is the fun part of Farming Simulator. A little bit of lag there that luckily I didn't blow by nearly as much as I thought I would. Well, that didn't work. Alright, let me restart. It did not lock into the track right away, and then all it takes is that little bit, and then you can't get lined up before you're on the field. And given that you don't have to quite plow the full field to get the contract work done, it probably would have been okay, but it's early enough that I don't want to be tossing that away. I haven't even hit 10% yet. I haven't seen that pop up. But one of the things I do love about Farming Simulator is just that ability to constantly hit a nuance or hit a sequence of events. There's the 10%, by the way, that you haven't run into before. Or maybe I'm just forgetting things. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm still pretty good at remembering what's happening, but who knows? So we'll let you guys take that mild humor for, what it is, the early memory loss or whatever. But the situation I had, because of the number of hours and the fact that life is there, and obviously I need to work with it, and that's the main focus versus entertainment, is I missed my opportunity, and some of it was certainly just because I was burned out on doing stuff here, because it's a lot of time, and I had gotten into cut last time and realized, oh my goodness, I did not fertilize. The thing I did discover, however, was, and I think it's because grass is in a forage state when I'm doing the cutting, so it's not at the official ready to harvest, which would obviously give me a little bit more output, but would take an extra day. It allowed me to fertilize, so I was able to fertilize and cut the same day, and then I fertilized again at the end of that day. So it was a really long day that day that I did work. But things got done and it worked. That's that's important again for the environmental bonus score, which I think adds quite a bit given the volume of material I'm selling. So I got on last night for a little while, probably an hour and a half, and sold some of my silage. We're above the midpoint, so I'm already staying ahead of the average. I don't think it's going up much today, which will be November. So I did sell in October, and that was kind of my choice, was, well, I could continue to sell silage, or I saw this contract, and I'm like, I could do this contract because I really need to be mowing, and while I still have the work of hauling tens of loads of silage on a daily basis through the winter now coming up to get things sold, I'm 4 or 5 hours from when I was doing that. So I kind of felt like when I stopped yesterday, knowing when I would be getting up, what my normal start of the day was, that I would be up at the point of having a situation where I can't go ahead and be out of the day yet. And so but I just didn't really sit and do the hard math to be certain, and I'm like, it'll be what it'll be, and went from there. Now, says the man who was joking about early memory loss, again, I'm hitting one of those points where I've lost my train of thought, which happens more often than is not irritating. Yes, I remember where I was going. So, yeah, the situation in the silos and why I was selling things yesterday was I had reached the saturation point, actually quite a bit ahead of that. It probably had been sitting that way for a day, where my silos had produced up to their capacity of silage, and I was maxed out. So I had to clear some space so that overnight they could continue to run, with the intent that hopefully I could get the mowing done. And if they do catch up, I don't have much time when they're sitting and waiting, but it also gives me a little extra capacity to put things in, because I do think I have a good amount of space here. So yeah, we still have about 30,000, but I've got more than enough in the large silos, and probably more than enough in the small ones as well, to go ahead and get the entire harvest in without the capacity of the silo suddenly being, I have to wait to pull things off the field. So I'm steering clear of that. That hasn't been an issue that I've really run into at any point. And so the volume of silage that I have, I'm getting a closer bead on what that is. I've stopped kind of the super accurate tracking because I've determined there's enough consistency in kind of what I get for an acre of silage and understanding where I'm at, and then more importantly, seeing the overall results come in very close to the estimates that I was making. But at this point, if I have both silos, or all 4 silos full, I'm looking at basically a little over 1.1 million liters of silage in the large silos, and about 650,000 or almost 700,000 liters in the small silos. So I've just been kind of getting jerky in the commentary, so I'm going back to my old process of doing the turnaround without talking and cutting that out, and going ahead and then talking on the runs when it's just on cruise control and locked onto the track and just going. So between those, when I have full silos, I've got 1.8 million liters of silage already, which, when I was just doing the small fields, already exceeds what I was getting off those fields by about 50%. And I've got silage that still needs to be processed, and I've got another cutting coming. So, we're probably over 2.5 million liters of silage a year is what my production is here, and that's pretty significant. That's a lot of grass, and that translates into a lot of money. And given that that's the goal of what we're doing here, that is in fact a good thing. It's just, frankly, an exhausting thing. So I have talked about in previous episodes that when I move to Westby, Wisconsin, which is where we're going next, that my land holdings will not be as significant as they are here. And I knew that kind of in my gut buying this field, but it was a bit of an experiment as well, because there was a little bit of a thought, because if you go back to conversations I've had all over the channel on the Farming Simulator things, the work time calculation, it doesn't include all your turnarounds, but if you have a larger field and you're doing less turnarounds because you're just going up and down longer and you're in theory in the field more often, my hope was that it really wouldn't be quite as substantial. And the reality is, I need to be honest with myself, is that probably means it goes from 6 hours to 5 hours on a good day, on a really good day, because the turnarounds are maybe 20 or 30 seconds. In most cases, when I'm cutting them out, again, because I'm not talking during that period and just trying to keep the videos at a reasonable length, they're 15 or 20 seconds. So that an hour would be 120 turnarounds, which with the smaller equipment is not unreasonable, but and so I've got that to some degree, but I also have the working of the edges of the fields. Now I could drop all that off, and once again, as I think I've shared, that would, however, lower my yield across all the fields if I just said, nah, I'm just basically cutting the middle, and whatever I grab, I'd be leaving 100,000 liters of grass with every cutting. And that'd be, translates obviously to 400,000 liters across the year, and that was more than I was getting off of one entire cutting of my field in my original state with my 3 fields, which, if I'm being truthful, is not my original state. My original state was obviously the first couple fields that I got pretty quickly. So that at this point gets you up to speed. You can see I'm within 15 minutes of being able to mow, so gearing up. I'm steeling myself mentally for that. And I'm going to get going with that as soon as possible, but I've got, 50% to go on this field yet. Obviously, I'm going to get this contract done. There's a possibility I'll throw the AI onto it and let the AI finish this while I start the grass, but it's probably unlikely. I'll probably be close enough in 15 minutes that it's going to take another 5 or 10 minutes to be done. That's one of the reasons I took this. But it does remind me of something else that I was going to share that was kind of a verification or a key point that I definitely am seeing. So most of the harvest contracts, even with the bonus, are going to yield under $10,000 of income. And at that level, they're taking about an hour. It'd be hard to say it's less than that. By the time you get the equipment up there, with all the turnarounds and so forth, even on smaller fields, it takes some time. And, you've got to haul, and usually the equipment you've got is not letting you fly up the field, so you're going pretty slowly. All of those things line up to be about an hour of work for 10,000 liters. I'm getting about 3,000 liters for every load of silage I take over, and it takes me about 5 minutes round trip even from my furthest silos to the sell points. So I can get $10,000 done in 15 minutes by selling silage. Now, if I'm being truly data focused and data accurate, I don't want to be fooling myself and you with bogus math in that, obviously to get to that point of having all that, I have to do those 6-hour days of mowing and whatever it is, the extra half hour of fertilizing each time and so forth to get there. So there's more than 15 minutes in making $10,000 on the farm. It's all the cutting that takes the chance to get those 3 loads, which would be 48,000 liters. That's probably another 15 minutes of cutting, or maybe even a half hour of cutting. So it's not quite as vast or stark a difference. But the point being, that's one of the reasons I'm pretty comfortable just seeing the contracts go and others doing them, because I just think it's still far, far more lucrative with the grass than it can ever be with the contracts. Because if I go back to my actual experience where I had the really long days in the beginning when all I could really do was contracts, because especially that first season when I was waiting for the crops to go and still had not come to the realization that grass was king, I spent 2 days, about 9 hours per day, working on the server because I had the time. It was coming up during the holiday period and so forth, and the weekends, and it was simpler to do that. And I never made more than $100,000 in each of those days. I was still making less than $10,000 an hour doing contracts full bore, very focused on the harvest contracts that are the ones that are the most lucrative because I can get the extra crop and so forth. So it just makes it really hard. And like last year on the farm here, even with the missed cutting, so that means I didn't have 700,000 to 800,000 liters of silage, and I guess let's be truthful there too, because I had to move that one silo and I sold it with over 170,000 liters of silage in it. It could have been right around 1 million liters of silage that had been left and not harvested and or was lost. And even with that, I nearly paid off $500,000 of loans from what I got. So it goes back just mathematically. If you think about what it would take to generate $500,000, or let's be conservative and say $400,000, because that's definitely what I had gotten there, of profit off of fields. With anything else, the operation would be massive and would be taking easily as long as what I'm doing on the grass. So while it's long, it's commensurate for the reward, I think, and still ends up being more realistic, because I think it would just be impossible to do that without grass. And so that's what still gives me a pretty good feeling. I've got, in essence, 3 more years, so counting this cutting, if everything runs along, I've got 13 times to mow here before it's time to say sayonara. And there will probably maybe be one less cut, because once again we're moving on winter 1, so that would be December. And so cutting as I'm going to today, in November next time, unless my silos are fully empty, and maybe that's what I'll do that year, to just try to maximize things. But we'll see, because if I'm selling at the lower amount, and I'm pausing because I'm kind of thinking and running figures in my head very quickly, the likelihood is, if I'm selling, I'm going to be selling during the really low period there. So I'm going to be at 150 something, 1,000 for the silage, versus at least the 170 that I am now. I'm not going to be able that year, no matter what I do, to get into the 180s or the 190s, because that happens during winter, and we're not going to be present at winter. But going ahead and doing that, and then going through the work of cutting, even if I do, say, half of it, and spend 3 hours cutting, and then wait toward the end of the day and sell what I can, and then obviously if I'm still waiting into winter 1, because they're probably not going to move us at midnight. There's a possibility it would be 4 p.m. real time on winter 1, and I would have time during the day to do sales and work and so forth. But I don't know that even doing that last cutting is going to make a lot of sense. It's, if I really get down to it, the last 2 cuttings might not make sense, because they're just going to be so much silage to process through. But I'll have to see that as I'm experiencing it in real time and what's really happening. Oops, a little too fast around there. We've got less elevation here, I think, so I whipped around, hadn't locked into my line, and that makes it unlikely that I'm going to be able to plow it correctly. So I may actually get this field done before midnight, which is pretty awesome. I wasn't really thinking, although 45 minutes to plow a field would be quite a long time. So yeah, now in hindsight, if I had a tinier plow, which it could have given me on this, but it didn't, which was why it was tempting to take, and why I went ahead and took it. But either way, at most I have 13 cuttings to go. So that's a lot of time. If that's 78 hours of time. That's over 3 full 24-hour days that I'm going to spend in the next 6 weeks cutting grass here on generational farming. So it gives you a little bit, maybe a different way to look at it, the perspective of exactly how much work that this is entailing for me here to stay on top of this. And it has been a challenge. It's been a struggle, especially during the work week when I have less time. So even keeping things going, while I'm work from home, and kind of peeking over my shoulder, which certainly makes things take longer, because sometimes I'm just leaving the tractor sitting at the end of the field and working on something that I need to focus on for a direct period of time, versus being a little more passive in what I have to be working on, and able to kind of just roll back and forth every couple minutes when it gets done with the pass of the field, turn the tractor around, line it up, let it go, be able to do something for a couple more minutes and so forth. Even doing that, it still makes it hard some days to get done with the 6 hours of mowing that are taking place. And obviously if I get other things thrown at me by the game like liming and so forth, that have to happen. I had to soil sample. That's something else I just realized that I did. So the three small fields had to be soil sampled again. That happened on that same day that I realized I hadn't fertilized and so forth. So I did soil sampling, fertilizing, mowing, and fertilizing, all in one incredibly long day. That I had to fit in around all the other stuff in real life that was going on, like clearing snow off the driveway, this, that, and whatever. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to kid anybody. So if you're watching this and you're, an FSN member and you're here and you're like, hey, I want to think about generational farming, that's at least what I'm doing with it. Now there's certainly ways to be a lot less active, but obviously depending on what your goals are, if it's just, hey, I want to just have a different experience and I don't really care how I do in the competition and whatever, and I'm going to spend an hour a week at it, I'm sure there's something you can do in generational farming, but you're obviously not going to be competitive against folks who are doing more than that. But so yeah, so it's, I'm trying to be honest. I'm not complaining in any way. I mean, I did this to myself. I'd be an idiot to sit here and say, woe is me. This is obviously a choice I'm making to participate. I could up and quit. Other people have had to do that because they've said, hey, starting a new job, I can't play anymore. And they've pulled out even mid-season, and we've had a few of those. So, circumstances change. My circumstances could change, and suddenly things will have to be reevaluated. But for now, I'm here. More importantly, for now, I'm done with this. So thanks for hanging around through that. See, there's another cultivating, but this one's probably easily going to take an hour. And at this point, it's time to mow. And that's the struggle I've been having, is just that tug within me of, but there's a contract I can do, and I enjoy these, and I do. But then what I found when I do that, and I did fertilizing contracts earlier this year, it just makes a really long day even longer. And my thought was, well, the fertilizing contracts, they literally take 10 or 15 minutes, but they really don't, because I have to go disconnect all this equipment. I have to then put the fertilizer on. I likely have to go buy some fertilizer. Then I finally get to go to the field. I have to get to the field. I have to then get back from the field. I have to disconnect everything. You understand what all the steps I'm talking about if you've played Farming Simulator, or if you farm in general. I mean, there's a lot more than just the work. So I still got to wait a bit here until this actually will change over. But, that 15 minutes probably is turning into 45 by the time all of that is said and done. And in the meantime, the real life clock is ticking, and then I'm suddenly in pressure at the end of the day, and I'm kicking myself because at the end I made $2,000 or something because of doing that. Now I probably also have to wait until the field actually changes. Yeah, because there we go, it just popped. So if you missed it, you can rewind the video, but when I walked onto the field it was 2 of 3. Now it's 3 of 3, and I can actually mow it as I normally would. So yeah, and you can see like this grass here is now a bit more uniform to the grass at the edge. So the difference is, if we walk here, I guess I'll end with this. you know, you can see this is a lot fuller. It's got kind of the little wildflowers that grow in grass that's been unmowed for a longer period of time. Like, I'm going to get a higher yield off of that, but so it's not quite as high, but it's less of that close cropped grass that we were seeing when I was sitting here waiting for the time to roll over. So I'm going to get to work here. Again, you've seen it a lot. I'm not going to go through it. I'm going to keep doing grass in other places, so you're going to see it in other places because I'm going to be on different fields, and I'm going to let you share in the joy and the beauty of where I'm at and what I'm enjoying. But you're not going to be lacking for an opportunity to see grass being mowed by me in generational farming. So I'm going to go ahead, get my line set, my GPS line, and I'm going to go ahead and get mowing. And that is the update for now. And I will see you next time.